Hi, folks. It's Kira here. Thanks for joining me on the bridge. It is my very last show of 2014, and I am very pleased to have a great guest back. She is the editor of the U.S. Independent .com, and she's also of Occupy Corporatism. We may have a little bit of a glitch here, so I'm going to see about playing another song. Oh, good. People can hear me, so they just didn't hear the music. Okay, so we're going. Thank you, everybody, again for joining me, and I would like to introduce my guest, Susanne Posel. Thanks for joining me on the bridge.
Thank you so much for having me.
And welcome to self-produced radio. It's a lot of fun.
I couldn't do it, so I'm in awe of you because I could not do this.
Yeah, it's it's a lot of fun. So let's get into some of the things that you've had come out this week. Some of your stories that you've had come out in the U.S. Independent. What have you been focusing on?
Well, on OccupyCorporatism.com, I put out an article last night. Apparently, your employer can withdraw funds from your account.
Wow. So these are employers that you already have, like you get your pay by a direct deposit, or
yes.
Any employee?
Yeah.
Okay.
In Massachusetts, 1,300 employees of Plymouth Public School were shocked to find out that their paychecks were not in their account, and the exact amount of their paycheck was withdrawn from their account just in time for the holidays.
That is a serious bummer. Wow. And
yes.
So the company is facing no consequence for that.
Yes, the superintendent let everybody know that they are working on it, and they expect to have everything corrected by Monday, which is tomorrow for us. And 704 employees that had debits reversed in total, and 591 banked with Bank of America and Citizens Bank in Massachusetts, and they will have to wait until sometime next week to have their problem resolved. So in total, 1,300 teachers and faculty from Plymouth Public School found out that their money was taken out, the exact amount of their paycheck. And also in St. Paul, Minnesota, employees did not receive their paycheck for the holidays because of a, quote, glitch in the system that prevented their paychecks from being deposited.
Wow. And more, that's the requirement of employers these days, is that you have a bank account so that they can deposit your pay. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And they also give out those MasterCard and Visa prepaid cards. And so they'll put the money on that prepaid card. And in order to extract that money, you have to pay a fee. And right. You don't get the choice. And I don't think that that's correct. I understand the direct deposit, but you could change that into whatever currency you would like. You can keep it on your debit card. You can extract the cash out if you'd like. Some of the employers that put it on the prepaid debit card, you're charged a percentage for extraction. And then, maybe like $2.50 at the ATM, and it starts to run into close to $10 just to take out your money.
Mm-hmm. I think Walmart has a similar system with their employees, that they have like it's not really a bank there. It's a check cashing system there. And
they started that. They went in with Green Dot. They're absolutely insane over there at Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
They want to start a banking system, working with Green Dot to create a pseudo bank that doesn't necessarily exist in the real world, but it isn't necessarily cryptocurrency or digital currency in that sense that we understand it. It's just banking online, and they're working with Green Dot to put that together. And They're setting up medical clinics. They want to be your doctor too. So that you can go in and get your mammogram and get your flu shot and see a Walmart doctor. But my question with that is that doctor going to tell you that 90% of the products sold at Walmart are dangerous and they shouldn't be consumed or worn?
Yeah, really. And many places that's one of the very, very few employers in the area to choose from. It's like where I live, it's like, okay, Walmart or the government.
That's
Choose.
a bad choice.
Choose one of the two. One of them you will starve to death, and the other one you won't. Choose. But
You're
yeah.
free to choose.
Right, you're
Whoever we
free to
tell you.
choose.
You're free to choose. Whoever we tell you. Choose, choose. It's your choice. You're free to choose.
Right. Yeah. And
That's what people don't understand. Like my husband and I were rewatching The Century of the Self. And if you haven't seen this, it's a 4-part series all about how propaganda has been used in the United States. And what is surprising watching that again is how simplistic it is.
mhm.
That as soon as they get you to have an emotional attachment to a product or an idea or a person, you're hooked. You're a
Right.
customer for life.
Mhm.
And you might not even realize this.
Yeah. Yeah, and you identify with it and it becomes part of the way people identify you and your personality. It's very sneaky. Very, very sneaky. Starts young too.
Right. Like what we wear is an extension of who we are. And so we express ourselves by what we wear. And I remember that as a kid. That sort of ideology coming out of my mother's mouth and my friends' mouths and everyone else, that what you wear defines who you are. And I'm sure that it's been that way throughout probably time immemorial. If you're wearing clothing that is acceptable on a certain level, my husband, does a lot of business meetings and I went out and bought him some, shirts, some button downs to wear with his suits. And I had purchased a couple of, blue collar shirts. And he said, I can't wear those to these business meetings because blue is representative of a lower class. It's
Mm.
either, it's normally white. And so now I have to get him a bunch of different ties. But it never dawned on me that the color is symbolic of the class system within the class system. And so when you see that color, you're instantly reacting to the image that you have of someone who would wear that color and maybe not even conscious and treat them differently based on that. And again, might not even be conscious that that is happening because that program was ingrained in you at some impressionable time in your life and so buried deep down in your subconscious that you'd really have to sit down and think about, why am I treating this person a little bit differently just because they're wearing a blue collar button down instead of a white one?
Mhm. Oh yeah. And that, I mean, for some people it is conscious, and throughout history it, has been conscious. I remember, in the 70s and stuff, some people would, my mom and her friends and everything, they all wore blue, and it was like sort of a lefty thing. We're we're working class, and it was very conscious. Wear your blue proudly, you know. Yeah.
It, to me, that this sort of thing is just fascinating. We tend to forget because things have always been this way, that they've always been this way, but they've only been this way as long as we've been alive. And we're dependent on whoever told us what happened before and the credibility of that person or that book or that, authority figure, that their credibility, it checks out. But we might not realize why we do the things that we do, why, some gestures are considered offensive and others are not. Why do we have these words that we consider curse words and we're not supposed to say them? Like George Carlin and the 7 words you're not supposed to say on television, which some
Mhm.
of them you can say now.
Right. Right. Yeah, and which I forget, and if I'm on American radio, I'm like, oops, oops, oops. Because if I start talking about the system, you know, and how it affects our overall well-being in a negative way, I get really excited about it and I start swearing and, you know. It's I can't help it. I just can't help it.
You didn't have enough soap when you were a kid.
I didn't have any soap when I was a kid.
Really? I got soap
Yeah.
in my mouth when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm fortunate in that way. No soap.
Oh. Yeah, I ate a lot of soap as a kid.
I know my husband is thinking about bringing that back, but he, you know, can only blame himself.
I just
So,
tell my kids, you're not big enough to use that word, and when
yeah.
you are out of my home and paying your own bills, you can say whatever you want.
Right. Exactly. That's a good one. That is a good one. Yep. My son has
Keeping in
a.
line with the propaganda,
Mhm.
I put out an article again because, there's been a lot of bad press about police officers because they kill people.
Right.
And they're getting filmed and it's going up on YouTube and Vimeo and Vine
Right.
and pictures are going up on Instagram and all over social media. So they did another stunt. This was, a father and a police officer, got together. The Sankville, police department. Brian Deppies is the name. I apologize if I said your name wrong. This latest stunt was the father of this teenager who spent a, quote, rough year in the hospital fighting, quote, a rare life-threatening disease. And so the police officer pulled her over while she was driving and told her that she was going to get some tickets. And he handed her a plane ticket to New York and a ticket to a concert from her favorite band that was provided by her father. And this stunt was filmed and put up on YouTube and used as publicity again, because cops have a bad rap. And they are handing out presents. I think I wrote about earlier this month in December, the Lowell Police Department was wrapping up presents and giving them out to people, pulling them over as if they were going to give them a ticket. They were set up with, and the local station, Up TV, filmed all of this. So the Up TV had a crew at a store and the police officer was hooked up via camera, audio, and microphone to the gentleman in the store. And so he said to the people when he pulled him over, "What do you want for Christmas?" And as soon as the guys in the store heard it, on the radio system, they had little walkie-talkies and they would go and buy the gift, have it wrapped, and within 15 minutes show up at the police officer's car, and he would go to the back of his car and act like he was getting something, getting these presents out and bringing them over to the people. And oh, isn't it wonderful? And it's filmed on camera for everybody to see because, not all cops are bad, which means not all cops are bad.
Right.
But some of them are killing people.
Right.
And I don't care how many presents you hand out. And I don't care how many good times that you set up with the father of a woman or a teenager who was in the hospital, or this other officer who set up he was called to the scene in Alabama. This woman had gone into a Dollar General and was accused of stealing 5 eggs out of the store. And so he bought her a dozen instead of arresting her, went back to the precinct, and then magically showed up at her house with a week's worth of groceries. And
Mm-hmm.
on my website, in the breaking news section, you'll see this article, police combat recent bad press with more staged publicity stunts.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the videos are linked up in the article because I want you to see that the chief of police and the officers involved state specifically that they are happy that these stories made it to the news and got national attention because of all the bad press that cops have gotten recently. That's a PR stunt to me.
Yeah.
That's not genuine. If the cops want to do something nice, do something nice. And if you happen to be filmed, that's wonderful. But don't set up a TV and a video camera feed and all of this stuff and then say, "Oh, gee, we're just good Samaritans out there giving out presents and tickets to concerts," because we care about our communities. We don't want to kill you unless we kill you, but then we won't be indicted, but then we'll hand out more presents and buy you a week's worth of groceries. So don't
Mhm.
worry about it.
Yeah, and the other side of that is that the programming angle is to program you that if you put down, if you point out police brutality and the fact that it needs to end immediately and that it is a problem, a really big problem, that you're somehow anti-cop. And that doesn't compute for me because I'm not programmed in that same way, but there's a lot of people out there who are. And that's what these stunts do, is it sort of, enforces that programming or programs more, programmable people, but to that. Any critique is is anti-cop, even if you're critiquing police violence and the fact that they're become more militarized very quickly over, and it's very frightening, and it should be.
I left a comment last night on my Facebook page, because I had seen someone in my newsfeed talking about how people should not be held responsible for what happened generations ago. What happened today is not the responsibility of the people living today because somebody did something a generation ago or 2 generations ago. And so I said, well, if that's the case, then why is there still racism in the United States? Because we already had the civil rights movement and we already had affirmative action. It's because this ideology is passed down from generation to generation that we still have these archaic mindsets. And that means that what is happening today, the generation who is reacting today, is reacting based on programs that their parents gave them because their parents were programmed before them and their parents programmed before them. So at some point, it's like having an alcoholic family and you've got like 3 siblings and you all sit down to discuss alcoholism and the tradition in your family of alcoholism. And one of you has to decide not to drink and just not drink ever again. And that's just it. In order to break that cycle, in order to introduce that new quote mutation into the DNA so that there is at least one branch of the family that is not addicted to alcohol. But until someone says, I'm going to be the one to step up and break the cycle of alcoholism in my family, or I'm going to be the one to step up and break the cycle of racism in my family, or I'm the one who's going to break whatever cycle that is damaging to that family or that generation. Until one generation stands up or one individual in a family stands up, we're going to continue to pass this down. And we're going to continue to have these problems. They're cyclical because we continue to pass down bad information to the next generation.
I couldn't agree more. And for some reason, I have been, maybe it's some sort of archetype or whatever that I carry with me, but I've always been that person wherever I go. Which means people either love me or hate me, but it's just the way it is. And
I have that too.
yeah.
So,
so
you either,
relate.
I'm an outspoken woman and I'm intelligent. I'm not, I am, I'm sorry. I know that sounds kind of, narcissistic, I guess, but it's unnerving to a lot of people. And I just realized, I'm in my late 30s now and I'm not going to change. So this is me and this is who I am. And I revel in the people that don't like me because if they're still talking about me, then at least I'm still relevant. The haters are sometimes your most prized possession when it comes to the audience because they continue to just talk about you and publicly and hate you. And that's, to me, that's wonderful. If no one is talking about me, then I start to get nervous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just used to having, to being feared. For some reason, I've never, done anything except for just tell the truth. But I guess that's scary enough. And just be, like you said, intelligent and also physically imposing. Very tall in Amazon, like just real tall. And so, sorry that my existence flies in the face of what I should be, but I'm not. I'm not at all sorry. And I never will be. I don't do sorry for existing. I decided that
No, you
really
shouldn't.
young.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't. You absolutely. your right to exist and their right to exist and your right to speak your mind and their right to speak your mind are synonymous. You can't have one without the other. So the unfortunate part for those who don't want people to speak their mind is you need to shut up or we need to keep talking. Because if we're forced to shut up, then you're forced to shut up.
I don't like to so much revel in the haters so much. It's just like, unnecessary evil, I guess, but um I kind of do revel a little bit in when I say a truth and people react negatively to it, or they're reacting out of their programming or what they've been taught that was wrong, and then I get this note like 6 months later that's like, you know you were right. And I'm like, I know I was. But I do like that, and that happens a lot too, so um it
I
seems to
think
all.
it's just very difficult. Like we were talking about before the show, we forget or we weren't taught why we do the things we do, why this is acceptable, why this isn't. The origination of our laws and what we accept as presentable in public and what is not. And I think that if we went back in history and looked to see how these things evolved into what we see today, we might be very, very shocked to find out that we are supporting things that we might not necessarily support. But because over time, the layers get pulled aside and the bare bones of it becomes what the next generation sees, and therefore tracing it back to its origins becomes difficult. Where it's possible, I think we should do that. We should go back and learn the history that maybe we don't know, so we can understand why we live in the world that we do. And I think if we do that, we're more apt to make a conscious decision about where we want to go in the future.
Yeah, and maybe that is why, at least education in America is public education is sadly lacking in history. American students really don't know even their own history, much less, the history of the world. And it's embarrassing, really. Um, and I think it's probably pretty purposeful as well.
Absolutely. If people just go along and do what they're supposed to do and do what's expected of them and never question where that came from and why this is the way it is, then you're never going to have an upset. You'll never have to deal with a revolution of any kind, and you can just keep pushing people along the way that you want them to go. Sort of like a maze where areas are blocked out and there's only one way to get out, and you're directing them through the maze. They know that they're in the maze and they know that there's only one way to get to their destination, but it's a predetermined destination. It may not even be where they want to go, but that's irrelevant because that's where everything else is going. So everybody just has to go and flow along with the river and, never buck the system. Don't ask any questions. Just keep going and make sure that what you're contributing is positive to the whole, the whole of the society, because if not, then you're a drag and then you've got a whole host of other problems.
Yeah, and our very notion of what I've been watching is our very notion of what freedom actually is change over the years. Um, so I'm 45 now. I've been watching it for at least 25 years, and it's scary that we're at the point now where the MO is so tired, and I've seen it so many times. But people still fall for it. I mean, we're at the point where the media can manipulate people into thinking that watching a really stupid movie, like The Interview, is a celebration of freedom, that's somehow connected to freedom in any way. It's astounding.
It's astounding that it works to me. The whole thing with The Interview is just Why didn't North Korea get upset when Team America World Police came out? Because that movie is just wall to wall making fun of that guy's father. Wall to wall.
Yeah.
It's it's offensive, you know. If you're gonna look at it that way, I'm offended for him because it's that offensive. Just making fun of him for straight 2 hours. Nobody said a word over North Korea when that movie came out. Nobody said a word. Nobody cared. Because
Mhm.
that's part of the game. That's what happens. You make fun of each other.
Right.
That's part of the immaturity of this whole entire thing, evidenced by the fact that we still make fun of each other and governments do it to other governments. But this movie all of a sudden is so offensive that they have to perform cyber attacks on Sony, which, you know, nobody's really been talking about since, Michael Jackson died, which conveniently he would have owned about 54% in voting stock if he had lived in Sony, which means he would have owned
Uh-huh.
Sony.
Yeah. So what's going on there? I mean, I just simply don't believe that North Korea would hack Sony. I just don't. Why? You know, it doesn't make sense. And just the whole way it played out, where Washington D.C. was like, "Hooray for reversing your decision! Hooray for freedom!" You know, it's just propaganda. Anyone? You know, just eat it up, folks. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, everybody's going to watch. You can watch the movie now for $5.99 on YouTube. And I'm sure everybody is clicking on that and paying $6 to watch it.
Yeah.
And wherever else it's being played. I'm sure that they are. Because
Yep.
this movie now is, no matter what the quality of the acting or the quality of the film is, people will watch this movie because of the circumstances surrounding it and any way they can get a hold of it. And people will actually go out of their way to seek it out, where before it wouldn't have even mattered to them. They would have been like, oh, a new movie's out in the films or whatever. The theaters, I'll just, see the trailer and decide whether or not. No, people are actually going to seek this out and
Mhm.
watch it and revel in it regardless of whether or not it's a good movie or well acted or an Oscar winner or whatever, just because of all of that circumstantial crap going around because of it.
It probably would have bombed otherwise. You know, it certainly wouldn't have made any money. It's dumb movie. They probably went over budget and figured, well, we got to think of something to create some a buzz about this movie. Yeah, North Korea hacks us. You know, I mean that's more plausible than what we were told.
I always think it's funny when they say, well, we have the IP address. We know that it came from Iran. We know that it came from servers in North Korea. Oh, really? Even rudimentary hackers understand something called mirroring, which it has various forms and various names. But essentially what it is, let's say you're sitting in the Netherlands and you bounce off of a server in Idaho and bounce off of a server in Pakistan and bounce off a server in Afghanistan and bounce off a server in Washington DC, and then all of a sudden you hack somebody. So when they say, I've got the IP address, I say, which IP address? And did you take the time to research to find out if there was any mirroring involved? And I'm pretty sure you can't figure that out in less than 36 hours, which was about when the hacking happened and then they reported on it. So that to me right there, that's just logic and reasoning. Just take the aluminum off and put the other hat on that doesn't, cause your brain to malfunction in Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And look at this logically. It's physically impossible for them to do all of that research to get through. And I'm pretty sure that anybody hacking a major studio would have used a mirroring technique. They wouldn't want to go directly from them to the attack. They'd want to bounce off and make it difficult to figure out where the attack actually came from. So again, it doesn't make any sense. It's impossible. The story that we're being told is just obviously not correct.
And so are most of them. Um, Gosh, I guess I watch the mainstream news just to know what the latest, programming attempt is or something. I mean, or just the patterns, and just knowing the patterns, I mean, when they, for instance, said that they were pulling everything because they were caving to North Korea, I was like, oh, okay. So then they're gonna reverse their decision, and yeah, it was just so obvious before it even all played out.
Yeah, and BitTorrent probably tongue-in-cheek offered to premiere the film, which is free downloads. So Sony wouldn't make any money off that. But I remember seeing that, and then I think it was just before Christmas. I was on YouTube, and it was my first option on the front page. Oh, watch the interview. I said, oh, wow, somebody downloaded it to YouTube. I'll watch it. See, I'm programmed too. And I click on it and it says $5.99. I'm like, those scurvy so-and-sos, look at them. Yeah, let's continue to make as much money as possible. 'Cause that's all that matters. Ratings and marketing and how far your name is out there, whether you ask for facial tissue or a Kleenex, that makes a world of difference.
Yeah. Yes. It's pivotal. It tells us whether you're part of the Illuminati or not.
Or any crazy scary group. There's a lot of other crazy scary groups that have been around a lot longer than them that terrify me every
Yeah.
single day, and it's acceptable cultism.
Right.
The cults that we don't accept, those are the bad ones. And I'm not saying that the Illuminati is good. I'm just saying that our view of them is, oh, that they're bad. The accepted cults in our society are good because they do such wonderful things, even though they're doing horrible things in the back room. Never mind that. They're
Mhm.
doing all these wonderful things up in front. Just pay attention to what's happening in front of you. Don't pay attention to what's happening backstage.
Right. Or the programming involved there. Or how if someone has the bravery to get out, what happens to them after that too? Even in the so-called acceptable cults is pretty horrifying.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Uh, Scientology, the members of Scientology that come out and want to talk, they're always talking about how they're being followed. They're being attacked. They get horrible emails, people showing up at their door. They're hounded. They're surveilled. And this is a religion. That's crazy. That's insane. I mean, why are they doing that? Obviously, but what makes them think that they can do that?
Well, there doesn't seem to be a um, consequence, does there, for them to do that?
No, if you say that you're doing something because God told you to, or in the name of God, you obviously and immediately invoke righteousness to that cause, and anyone who agrees with your version of God backs you up. So you have instant acceptance from a certain percentage of the population, regardless of what it is.
Mm, yeah. So not only has our concepts about freedom changed, over the last 20 to 40 years, but our concept about religious freedom has been programmed from the country's inception, where we're programmed to believe that we all have this freedom of religion. We can all practice whatever religion we want, but even that's not true. It's just certain religions that are
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, it's the accepted religions. And that goes back centuries. The religions have been fighting with each other for centuries. And we see modern day versions of that fight with people attacking Islam. I'm not saying that Islam is good. I'm
Mhm.
against all religion. But the fight between the Christians and the Islamics has been going on for centuries. And so the rhetoric that, oh, they're bad and oh, they do this and oh, they do that. Well, look at what you've done and look at what you're doing now. I find it fascinating. I saw a couple of days ago someone posted on social media, and this person was talking major smack about Pope Francis up until recently, when Pope Francis came out and said that there's a plethora of pedophiles up at the top and right underneath him in the Vatican.
Mhm.
And that, this is a fact, and he knows about this, and this has been going on for a long time. And then all of a sudden Pope Francis is getting praised for doing
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And the same people who were talking about what a terrible, horrible thing he is and where he's leading the Catholic Church. And then he comes out and says, "Oh yeah, well you're speaking my language now, so I'm going to support you." Those are weekenders. Those are not the people those are the guys who can be, you can dangle a carrot in front of their face and they'll be deterred. Don't trust those guys at all.
Yeah, yeah, just give them one little thing that they're asking for, and admitting it is far different than doing anything about it. Stopping it, you know, those are two different things. And they've admitted a lot and done very little.
Yeah, it's like the police department. When we look at Darren Wilson's background, before he worked at the Ferguson Police Department, he worked for, I can't remember what city he was in. It's linked up in one of my articles about him on OccupyCorporatism.com. He was fired along with 3 other officers while he was still a rookie cop for targeting African Americans in that city and doing so for several years. So he has a history of this,
Mhm.
but nobody pays attention to that. And I find that fascinating that we pay less attention to the history of the things and more attention to the immediate situation, not trying to figure out how that came about, because nothing happens in a bubble. Everything is a product of what happened before it. So why we don't look and see where the systemic problem is, I don't understand. But we're very eager to attack the situation and say, oh, well, we've conquered this specific thing.
Mhm.
Now it's done and it's over and we'll never have to deal with it again, which is
Right.
totally untrue.
Right. And this goes back to what you're saying about the civil rights movement, and how until you deal with it in your family and you're the one who says like, well, I'm not going to be that way, or challenge your own family. The very system is in place to give us the illusion that we've actually moved forward with regard to civil rights. So we have these civil rights laws in place. People marched, things happened. Schools got integrated. All these great things happen, and we're told this history and how it's moved us forward. But the reality of the situation is, there's still discrimination for whatever reason. It doesn't matter what the reason is, and it shouldn't matter. You can literally prove that horrifying things were done to you by your employer, by your boss, or whatever. But the system protects, and so it's designed for you not to be able to prove that it was done to you because of your protected class. There's no way to actually prove that. And so these EEO laws, for instance, they don't protect anyone either who belongs to any of the protected classes or who doesn't. It protects the people who get beyond a certain level in the government, for instance, like into management, because each agency will go to protect itself, and by itself it means the management. So we've gotten
Right.
nowhere.
Exactly. Go back to Cliven Bundy's comments. He is a rancher and he owns a business and he employs people. And he still thinks that black people would be better off on the plantation because at least they would have their families together and they would be working and they wouldn't be sitting on their front stoop doing nothing, collecting a government check. These ideas are still around. He said that on Fox News like it was nothing, like it's normal.
Yeah,
People still think this way.
they do, and they're willing to admit it, which means that they don't think that it's messed up. And
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like, I get a lot of comments like, "Oh, Suzanne, will you quit talking about racism because you're part of the problem? You're talking about racism and it's dividing us." No. Me talking about the problem is not dividing us. The silent way in which we think about other people based on something that has nothing to do with their ability to perform a function or their intelligence level is the problem, and that's the silent killer. Somebody might not get a job because of the color of their skin, or someone might get fired because of the color of their skin, or because they don't speak an accepted language in an area, even though that area is still part of America. And I'll give you an example. I worked at Office Max down in Coral Gables when I was in my early 20s, and I was fired because I asked that the morning meeting be spoken in English, because the morning meetings were conducted in Spanish. And even though members of management and several members of the employee staff were both bilingual and English speaking, some of them were not. This was obviously offensive to the management staff, and I was fired because of this. Miami is still in America, last time I checked. And the reason why was because I have olive skin and dark hair. And people assumed that I was Cuban, even though I'm not. And even though I can't, I mean, it's a lot easier for me to hide my ethnicity than an African American person is. I still received a massive amount of discrimination losing my job because I lived in an area that was predominantly Cuban and spoke predominantly Spanish. So racism on all sorts of levels happen in this country all the time. We just don't talk about it. We don't talk about why we don't like people, or why we fire people, or why we don't join certain groups, because maybe we don't want people to know that we have racist thoughts. But that thought, that idea that we pass down to our children through generation after generation, is the cause for discrimination and strife. And until we get rid of the thought and the idea and on any level that it's acceptable, then we're going to continue to have this on any level with any race. It just depends on who the race du jour is for that generation.
Yeah, and the conversation is always framed too in, what's acceptable to talk about and what's not acceptable to talk about. And so that stifles everything. It stifles movement, and it stifles understanding, because when people are talking about race relations, or trying to get some cross-cultural understanding, there's always this, well, one group has to be the victim and the other group has to be the oppressor, when the reality is we're all victimized and oppressed or oppressive in different ways. And but we're all victimized by the system in some way. So that conversation, we can't get to that point where we have this sort of realization together that we're all victimized in some way by the system. So why don't we all kind of stick together and fight the system instead of each other? It takes an honest conversation to get to that place.
Exactly. One of the things that impressed me the most when I was writing about the riots in Ferguson and in New York and all over the country, rather, these were Gen Xers, which, yay, our generation finally got up and did something. And Police State is a great platform for us to use, so it's wonderful. The second thing was there were all colors in those crowds. It wasn't like the civil rights movement where it was predominantly one color. So every color agrees that this is not okay, and that it happened to be two black men and a black child, but that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Everybody of every race, creed, and color got out there and said, no, this is unacceptable to us, that you do it to any race. So I'm hoping that this is the beginnings of a trend. I'm hoping, because a trend could cross generations, and then hopefully maybe my grandchildren won't care about what color people are. It just won't enter into their ideology or vocabulary.
Yeah, and because it just doesn't matter. And the thing about the riots and everything was, we know there was a lot of provocateurs, because they always are there to make it look like peaceful protesters are really a bunch of, rioting freaks, or violent anarchists, right? Because you always have to, in the media, you always have to equate violence with anarchy. But the thing is that I think a lot of people are realizing now that they can kill any of us and get away with it. That That's what it comes down to. And if we don't say something now, they're going to continue along that trend.
Yes, we have to say something. And regardless of how you're portrayed in the media, if it's not right, it's not right. And it doesn't matter if 5 million people believe it's okay or 5 people believe it's okay. If it's not okay, it's not okay. So how they portray it in the media, unfortunately, has to do with what angle they're going for. And if they're using marketing techniques, you're going to see a lot of fear porn involved. But uh, outside of all of that, we all know instinctually what is right and what is wrong, regardless of what we were taught through society or through religion. We know that things are okay and things are not okay. And so this idea to me is archaic. It's, it should not exist we should be beyond that. But we have many archaic ideas in our society that I think this should just go away, but we hold on to them dearly for dear life as if our life depended on it. So, like I said, I'm hoping, I mean, realistically, it would probably be my grandchildren or my great grandchildren that might have an inkling toward not even talking about what color people are when they refer to their friends or their loved ones or whatever. But for right now, it's a battle between let's not talk about it, because if you are, then you're helping the other side. You're helping to divide us. So, okay, tell that to a rape victim. Or tell that to a victim of pedophilia, that they should just not talk about it. It'll go away if they don't talk about it.
Well, that is what they tell rape victims and victims of pedophilia. That is what society generally tells victims of any type of sexual violence, because it's so horrifying that nobody really wants to talk about it or do anything about it or even admit that it actually exists.
And that's how it keeps going. When we don't talk about things, that's how they keep going. When we do talk about things, that's when conversations happen, and that's when people start looking into things and evidence comes out and people are made to pay for their crimes. As long as we don't talk about things, because, oh my God, it might divide us even farther and you're part of the problem if you're talking about it, that just means that it stays underground and it becomes an accepted thing. Oh, well, grandma's from an older time, she just, that back then, that's when they used to do those kind of things. But my mother remembers when there were separate bathrooms and separate water fountains. African Americans couldn't come through the front door of a restaurant, had to wait in the back. And, there were like 3 or 4 tables in the back of the restaurant. And if they were filled up, well, the line in the back was long. It was disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my mother's generation. So
Yeah, mine
now
too.
here we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here we are, and we're telling each other that we shouldn't be talking about it again.
Yeah.
It'll go away if we just don't talk about it. People won't die at the hands of cops if we don't film them.
Right.
That's how ridiculous that statement sounds.
Yeah, and isn't that the way it always goes? I mean, we're not talking very long ago. Like you said, our mothers remember when. I mean, my mother grew up in rural Louisiana, and she remembers, by virtue of her father marrying a white woman, being able to go to white schools because she, and seeing the black kids waiting for a different bus going to a different school, and wondering, wow, why?
We just need to talk about these things, get them out in the open, and deal with them once and for all. It may be that we decide that we want to have racism for X or Y reason. I don't know. It may serve some positive benefit, even though I cannot think of one, but I'm trying to give the people the benefit of the doubt. Otherwise, let's just get rid of it completely, and let's get on with setting up a civilization that we could actually be proud of.
Who can argue with that? I certainly can't, Suzanne. So
I wrote an article, if you want to change the subject a little bit, I wrote an article this week about Facebook. They were accused in a class action lawsuit of scanning private messages of users for references to any website online and then adding the user's like to those pages on Facebook as part of a targeted advertising campaign, unbeknownst to all of us. So
Yeah.
there was a class in
I wish I could.
2013, and Facebook tried in a federal district court to have that case thrown out because they said, hey, we didn't break any laws. We were we are protected by the legal statutes and exemptions set up in the Electronic Communications Privacy Act of 1986, and this interception of these private messages were conducted in line with, quote, ordinary course of business. I love that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I notice that when I talk about something in my private messages, then, you know, suddenly an ad appears about that particular subject. Um, so I noticed that before your story came out, and I said, "Oh, Suzanne, she she picked up on that too."
There is a really big thing happening with Facebook, and unfortunately a lot of people in alternative media like to scare the crap out of you, so they'll equate it to an ABC agency and just to boost up ratings, and it has nothing to do with that. It's actually the surveillance that we almost never talk about, and it is the most prevalent, most accepted form of surveillance that we all agree to, and we don't talk about how horrible it is because it's a corporation, not a government agency. The NSA scares us or the CIA scares us, but Bloomingdale's or Macy's or Cisco, do they scare you? No. But they're watching you. They're buying information from Facebook. Facebook has released they released an algorithm in July of this year, and then starting in the beginning of next year they're going to release another one, but I think that they've released it ahead of time, and I think that's why my account has been suspended and continues to be suspended every single day. It
Mm.
magically logs me out of Facebook while I'm on there. It asks me to answer a CAPTCHA, which I've started taking screenshots of every single day and posting it on Facebook so people can see this. No matter what I put in the CAPTCHA, it's wrong. And I'm banned for 30 days from doing anything but posting to the Occupy Corporatism page or my own timeline. I can't comment. I can't like. I can share, but I can't involve myself in any groups. I can't do anything basically as far as interacting with my audience on Facebook. And then my original Facebook page or my profile got taken down, and they refused to put it back up unless I give them personal information, which I refused. So I started a new one. And along with that came a rumor that I'm an NSA agent, which I thought was
Oh,
fantastic.
please.
But this new algorithm with Facebook has to do with marketing and a new way in which they are profiling you on Facebook and using that information to sell to other corporations, including government agencies and including the ABC agencies that we are afraid of so much. But we're not paying attention to the corporations that are taking our data and filtering it out and selling it for extra, amount of money to other corporations or to governments. That surveillance we don't ever talk about. I don't know why that's not scary, because it's terrifying to me when I go on the internet and I look on the right side of a website and I see the sponsored ads from Google AdSense, and I don't do any shopping online. Barely do any shopping online, but I was looking for a replacement wedding ring set because I lost one of my diamonds out of my wedding ring. So that's all I see on Facebook is wedding ring sets all over the place, and on Google wedding ring sets, and it's really starting to annoy me. I'm thinking about just looking at something else, like maybe a tractor, so I could see something other than wedding ring sets in the AdSense. But that is because they follow me on Facebook. The algorithm pays attention to everything I post on all social media combined. And it is actually, it was created out of the University of Australia, Queensland in Australia. And this algorithm is the latest in the line of native advertising, which is something I don't know if I talked about on your show before.
No, you haven't.
Native advertising is the death of journalism. I mean, tabloid journalism did a great job in beating up journalism, putting it in the IC unit, but native advertising is like pulling the plug on the breathalyzer, and now they can't breathe, so the person's going to die. Basically, people are not clicking on banner ads, and they are not responding to most of the advertisements that they see on the right-hand side of the screen. So corporations have tried to figure out, okay, how do we get people to buy our products, and how do we get them familiar with our products if they're not paying attention to information online as far as advertising, and they're paying lots of money to advertise, and they're not getting the yielding that they want. So they've realized that they can write news articles that are a giant infomercial, but
Hmm.
it's put into the news feed on the news organizations like BuzzFeed and The Atlantic, and even some alternative media. I've caught them doing native advertising as well. Just to get you to buy their product, just to get you to look at what they're selling you. And it doesn't have, well, the most insidious part about it is it's lumped in with all the other news for the day. So if you go to BuzzFeed's page, 50% of their articles are native advertising, but it doesn't look any different than the actual news articles, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference unless you click on the article. And at the very top, you'll see in very, very small letters, sponsored by Pepsi or sponsored by Mountain Dew or
Hmm.
General Electric. Something that no one would ever notice. They've already seen the title. That's why they clicked on it. Now they want to read the article. And you go through it, and it's got source links just like every other article, and it's written just like every other article. But it's a complete commercial, 100% commercial. And so people think that they're getting good information. They're looking for a product to help them with something, and they think that by reading this article, this is really helpful and informative. And actually they have no idea that the people who put that article, published it on their website, were paid maybe $500 to several $1,000s, maybe even in excess of $6,000 or $7,000, depending on the outlet, to write that specific article.
Yeah, I see it a lot actually in the alternative media. People are looking to get healthy, and they, go gung ho with it, and there's a lot of try this and try that, and all you need is this and that. So just like when people are looking for something else besides religion, and the medical establishment as it exists today in America is like religion. So you get out of that, and then there's all these cults out there waiting for you to scoop you up.
Yeah, they don't realize that um, there are advancements that we have been allowed to make because of science, but because science deals with evidence and facts. And I'm not saying that all science is good. Some science is bad. Some science is paid off.
Hmm.
But if you have to suspend all logic and reasoning in order to buy into something, then I definitely wouldn't buy a product based on it, because it's probably not going to work, or it might make me even sicker than I am today.
Yep, yep. So let's talk about the CBD. Now that we're on to medical um, issues.
This is, this was actually born out of articles that I'd written about the snake oil salesmen in the CBD industry, all the way up to the top. Hemp Meds, PX, and Canaway, Medical Marijuana Incorporated. The problem here is cannabidiol has been shown in studies. If you go to PubMed, this is the National Institutes of Health website, and if you put in cannabidiol in the search, you'll come up with over 1,200 studies which show that cannabidiol has positive effects on everything from cancer to stomach aches. The Royal Society over in London put out a study last year showing cannabidiol had positive effects on neurological disorders, everything from mild depression to schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and everything in between. So I wanted to know what the problem is, because people are getting sick People are going to the hospital. People are going to the ER, and then they're being admitted into the hospital, and they're staying for like 1 or 2 weeks, 1 or 2 days or 2 weeks. What is causing this problem? Because cannabidiol has all of these positive effects. The U.S. government in 2003 patented cannabidiol as a cancer treatment, not a possible thing that you could try, a treatment for cancer alongside chemotherapy. So my question was, what's the problem? Because obviously the molecule can do what all of these studies say it does. The problem is the hemp paste. All of these products that are out on the market are based in this hemp paste, and a lot of it is coming from China. And China has different rules and regulations on what's safe and what's not. And I'm not saying that the FDA does a great job, because we have aspartame and all these vaccines, but China has even lower standards. And so people in the industry, one scientist who used to work for Dixie Botanicals, she's since left the corporation, and she was the person who created the product for them that Dixie Botanicals sells, and they sell CBD products. And she explained that the hemp paste coming from China has toxic solvents in it. It has live microbial life, and it is unfit for human consumption. And so I said, oh, well, what's the problem here? The problem is Project CBD put out a 30-page article describing the toxic solvents and doing independent laboratory tests of hemp meds PX and other products sold under Medical Marijuana Incorporated, and found that they all have toxic solvents and high levels of toxic solvents. So that's the problem. The problem is the hemp paste. The hemp paste is filled with wax and fillers and toxic solvents and live microbial life. And then so you get this hemp paste, and if you were to look at it as like a pound of hemp paste, 15% of that pound would be actual CBD, and the rest, 85% of it, is that black stuff, which has all of the stuff that I just told you about. And so if you're buying a product from one of these companies that uses the hemp paste, you're not getting the amount of CBD that you think you're getting, first of all. And second of all, you have to ingest all of that paste that has all of that bad stuff I just mentioned. And why would you do that? You're taking cannabidiol to take care of an issue physiologically that you have, or neurologically. You're not trying to make yourself sicker. I have a friend who attended a Hemp Meds PX inspired conference, the cannabis conference in Chicago. And he was given 12 samples of Hemp Meds PX and gave it to his mother, who has cancer. And she went to the doctor before she started taking it and had herself checked out. And then she started taking the Hemp Meds PX product and went back to the doctor and found out that she had even more tumors. Well, it doesn't surprise me knowing what's in the paste. So my husband and I got together with a manufacturer, Crystal Pure USA, and they provide a Crystal Pure CBD product. And that's why we named our product Crystal Pure CBD. It is literally the CBD molecule scraped off of the plant buds. It has no plant material in it at all. It's purely just the crystal CBD. It's refined, and it looks like sugar. It's totally clear. So we put that in hemp seed oil, and we're selling 500 milligrams of this CBD for a phenomenal price, because this product is not like anything on the market. Every other product uses the hemp paste in order to, as their base constituent to make their products. We realize that paste is toxic and it's causing people problems. And when you're taking it for health reasons, you don't want to cause yourself any more problems. It's antithetical to what you're doing. So we created this product, and we're happy. We've kept in contact with some of our customers, and one of our customers gave it to her 2 dogs. They were both given death sentences with cancer, tumors all over their body. I spoke with the woman about 2 or 3 days before Christmas, and the dogs are jumping, running around, having a good time. They're eating. They're not acting like they were just given a death sentence 3 weeks ago. I have a gentleman who gave it to his 91-year-old mother, who again was diagnosed with terminal cancer. She's now sitting up, eating, talking. She actually is trying to walk. I need to get in touch with him. I've been waiting till after the holidays to see if she's actually getting up and walking again. So it works.
That's
I
fantastic.
know that there's the possibility of providing something to people that works and doesn't have any adverse effects. There are no adverse effects with cannabidiol. Go to PubMed and look at these studies. There are no side effects. But here's the interesting thing. When I looked at all of these studies, and there's 1,295 of them, and I did look through all of them, folks. I really did. All of these studies, they were using the same form of crystal CBD that we're using. They were not using the hemp paste. They were using a crystal CBD product, which these pharmaceutical companies are now trying to synthesize and create a manufactured product instead of using the actual product from the plant. We are able to provide the product from the plant. It's not synthesized, and it contains no plant material in it, and again, no paste. So it's the same pharmaceutical grade that they are using in these studies we offer. It's a product unlike anything on the market. And with all of our customers, repeat customers coming back and telling us how wonderful the person that they gave it to is now up and walking and having a good time, and the dogs, just don't think about this just for your family, because a lot of these studies were done on animals. And we have receptors in our brain and in our body for cannabidiol. And so animals do as well. So if you have a cat or a dog or a horse and they're sick, this will work for them as well. The studies on PubMed show that, and we have customers that prove that to us. So I wanted to make sure that when it comes to cannabidiol, because I see that it works, I wanted to make sure that there was a product out there that didn't have any toxic anything created into it or surrounding it, so that we could actually get the real benefits of cannabidiol before the pharmaceutical industry comes out with the synthetic version and muddies up the whole entire possibility of not using the pharmaceutical industry to get healthy. You can actually use this to get healthy.
Wow, that's exciting. And it's legal.
It's legal in all 50 states. We are FDA compliant, and we are in the process of becoming FDA approved. We have a store on Amazon. Just put in Crystal CBD or Crystal Pure. Our website is crystalpurecbd.com. And we are also working with a group called Novus Medical Group, because I also realize that all of these companies just want your money. They want to sell you a product that has 85% toxic solvents in it, and they don't care. They just want your money. Well, I want to make sure that people get better. So my husband and I hooked up with Novus Medical Group. They are a national conglomerate of doctors, nurses, and health practitioners who work with medical marijuana and CBD. And so if you want medical advice, you can go to Novus Medical Group, sign up with them, and you can buy our product at wholesale. You can save about $80 or $90 off the product.
Wow.
And get the medical advice that you need from professionals who have licenses and work with this stuff. But our product has no THC. It is not illegal in any of the 50 states. As far as the FDA is concerned, it's considered a food ingredient. But our product was evaluated by the University of Colorado, and they gave their seal of approval, and they're going to start using it in drug rehab. So
Wow.
people who have problems with addiction, with narcotics, will be able to use the CBD and get better. So
So,
to me, that means that what we're selling is the thing that everybody is using to get all of these wonderful effects and all of these studies and all of these approvals. Why shouldn't the general public have access to that same level of cannabidiol?
yeah. And so tell us what the difference between cannabidiol and THC is.
THC is the hallucinogenic element of the marijuana plant. Most strains of hemp plant do not even produce THC, but some of them do, and it's at a very low dosage, and it's not even the type that when you think of getting high with a marijuana that you would get from hemp. You just can't get high off of it. The best thing about our product is it has no THC, and THC is available in all sorts of forms nowadays. You could add THC drops to our product if you'd like. It's not going to change anything. The cannabidiol is still going to be viable. Cannabidiol is the medicinal part of the marijuana and hemp plant. So if you're looking for a medicinal part of that plant, you're going to go after high dose of cannabidiol. But in the dispensaries, it's kind of like a crapshoot. You're not sure. Of course, they tell you that this plant is higher in THC, lower cannabidiol, or vice versa, but you're not sure. And it is kind of like, gambling. It's 50-50. This cannabidiol that we have, the Crystal Pure CBD, is triple tested. We have the laboratory tests on the website. It's our product is 99.8% pure. The base constituent that we use from Crystal Pure USA is 99.999% pure. And you can't get that anywhere. In fact, the laboratory in Oregon that we had our test done said that our product was more pure than the standard that the FDA gives him to base his tests on. So we beat the standard. You can't get any better than that. And it really does work. We're in the process after the holidays of gathering up some of our customers and getting testimonials, and so that people can hear from the customer exactly how it's affected them and what the benefits for them have been. Because when I read these studies over and over again, that convinced me right off the bat. I take it myself. I used to have what I think was the beginning of arthritis. My knees were just swollen in the wintertime, and I couldn't go up and down the stairs. And I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, so I'm always on the floor crawling around and playing with them, and I couldn't do that. When it came wintertime here, we live in Washington State, I was looking at the top of the stairs in the morning saying to myself, do I really need a cup of coffee to wake up today, or could I just live at the top half of the house? Just not go down. But after taking the CBD, I don't even think about it. I don't think about it unless I talk about it on the radio. I just don't. And my knees are not swollen anymore, and there's nothing else but the cannabidiol to attribute to that. And there are studies on PubMed that show that in all stages of arthritis, cannabidiol has positive effects of reducing the inflammation and actually repairing the problem.
Fantastic. So arthritis, cancer, what else?
Seizures, neurological disorders, gut problems, digestive problems, immune problems. In 2015, the National Institutes of Health will be funding a study to see what the effects of cannabidiol on AIDS patients will be. So I'm going to be following that. And there was a study put out just before Christmas that showed cannabidiol having positive effects on all types of breast cancer, male and female.
Wow, that's great. I know that medical marijuana has been very successful with a lot of AIDS patients in terms of battling the kind of wasting away disease. I mean, I've seen people go into hospice and then get treated with medical marijuana and come out of hospice for long periods of time. So I think the CBD thing is really very promising as well for its potential for maybe even glaucoma and all autoimmune disease, really MS, lupus, things like this, coupled with.
I'll give you an example. Michael J. Fox is now taking cannabidiol for Parkinson's. And he has publicly come out to say that, which for him was a lot. So I'm following that. I'm following the study that will be coming out next year on AIDS patients. And I think it was the middle of 2013, there was a little girl in Colorado. Her father was sent off to Afghanistan, and her mother was at home with her. This little girl has a seizure disorder, born with it, and was having 300 seizures a day. She was not even able to function because as soon as she come out of one seizure, she'd go back into another. And they were talking about taking her off life support. She was in the hospital, and they were afraid that she was either not going to come out or go into a coma or something was good. She was not able to function at all anymore. She was eating out of a tube. The mother gave her cannabidiol. She went and purchased high cannabidiol content in a dispensary and had a laboratory extract the cannabidiol from the marijuana and gave it to her daughter in a solution underneath the tongue. And her daughter doesn't have seizures anymore. And it stopped that same day when she gave her the first dose of cannabidiol.
Wow. Does she have to continue to give it to her then to stop them?
Yes. It's a degenerative disorder that is genetic. But cannabidiol has so many other positive effects to it. As a preventative, I'm 37. We were kind of briefly talking about this, but my mortality is becoming very acute to me now that I'm heading toward my 40s. And as a preventative, I don't see why not. It has all of these positive effects on everything that's going to possibly kill me in the next 40 or 50 years. And even though nothing's going to keep you alive perpetually, there's no such thing as eternal life. Cannabidiol in your older years, if you're taking it for 40 or 50 years, I can't see why it wouldn't make your transition peaceful. You wouldn't have to sit there and be ravaged by some disease or cancer. And then taking chemotherapy, which has a 4% success rate. So that doesn't even make sense to me, but most people do it. You wouldn't have to go through all of that if you're taking cannabidiol.
So why do you think that is that chemotherapy is the standard with such a poor success rate?
Because it makes a lot of money, because those machines and the medicine costs a lot of money. And the hospitals are run by corporations now. There's I think somewhere between 5 and 10 conglomerate corporations that own all of the hospitals that we have here in the United States, every single one of them. And so if it's not cost effective, they don't have it in their hospital. That's why maybe they have to ship you to another hospital to have a procedure done, because our hospital doesn't have the equipment to do it. That's why. So this costs so much money, and it is socially and medically accepted. But the rate of people coming down with cancer after chemotherapy is staggering, and I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but it's a dangerous statistic. Most people come back with cancer with a vengeance 2 to 5 years after they have had chemotherapy and die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the reason why is because the chemotherapy might get rid of the cancer it's treating, but it causes other cancers to start forming in other areas. And that's why they say, oh my God, the cancer moved from your throat to your liver it's because of the chemotherapy. Mm-hmm. And then by that time they put you in remission. You're not thinking anything of it. You're just going about your life thinking you're cancer free. And then all of a sudden one day something really terrible happens and you can't function, and you go to the hospital and you find out that your whole, your body's been ravaged by cancer, and they give you a death sentence. It's because of the chemotherapy that you went through that happens. That's the byproduct of chemotherapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's horrible to watch someone go through that because they're too scared to go a different route, or because insurance doesn't pay for any other route. Even, CBD probably has a much better success rate, and but it's not making the right people money, so it's not going to be accepted, not until the right people are making money off of it.
Right. And what I see in the cannabidiol industry, where snake oil is being sold like it's gold, and nobody knows the difference. It's such a new thing. Even though we've used it in other countries, it's a standard. Here in the United States, we don't know much about it. But we do know that marijuana is bad. And we have whole generations still around that watched Reefer Madness and know that marijuana, and that's all bad, you know. So we shouldn't do that. And we should outlaw it. And we shouldn't overturn the mistake that was made in the 1920s when anything that started with canna was outlawed. Even though our government was subsidizing the hemp farmers in this country like they do corn now.
Mm-hmm.
Forget about that. Anything canna was lumped into that bill that Congress signed, and it was done away with. And that was good for the oil corporations, because everything that we make, almost everything that we make, can be made out of hemp, that we make now out of plastic and other materials. It could be made out of hemp, including concrete. You can build your house with it. You can build your structures with it. It's amazing. From paper to buildings, to shoes, to cups. You know, we've got BPA in some of our cups now, and some of them are BPA free. Well, that's great. Now we have Trident in those BPA free cups. So if we could produce a hemp, quote, plastic cup and give it to our children and know that it doesn't have any of those toxins in it that are endocrine disruptors and cause cancer and all sorts of things, and it's made from a natural product and it's not destroying the rainforest and it's not hurting our planet. Yes, absolutely. Forget Reefer Madness. That was all propaganda. Just
I'm
focus
sure
on the fact that it works.
Cost effective as well. You know, it's not about that. You know, we really have to look at how the whole medical marijuana thing came about, and we have to look at what led to it and why. You know, there's this idea out there that, oh, maybe they're letting us have medical marijuana now. What are they going to slide through now that we're finally winning this battle? I don't know, but this battle.
What they're trying to do with cannabidiol is set up a synthetic version.
Mm-hmm.
So all these studies that you'll see that it's the same product that I'm selling, and now the pharmaceutical industry is going in and producing a synthetic version. Well, I know that when I take synthetic vitamins, and be very careful about the vitamins that you buy, because most of them are synthetic, and they don't tell you. Your body will just expel it naturally. It doesn't even know what to do with it. So you're spending all of this money on stuff that your body is it's passing right through. And your body says, I don't know what that is. Let's just keep it moving along. You don't get any of the benefits that you think you do. So synthetic cannabidiol, I can't see how it would be any other way. People would be taking synthetic cannabidiol and become sick or stay sick, and there'd be no change. So people would scratch their head and say, whoa, wait, cannabidiol must not work. But that's not true. Why would you have receptors in your brain and 7 points in your body if it doesn't work? Why is your body designed to take in the cannabidiol? And we know that it does all of these things that it does. That doesn't make any sense. You're made to take in cannabidiol. You're made to take in cannabidiol, literally.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to keep people going by the status quo, then you become part of the movement and mess it up. And then therefore people say, well, we tried that. It was a trend. It didn't work. We'll just go back to the tried and true,
Mm-hmm.
which is the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, it makes me wonder about all of these products you were talking about before that are, fillers and toxins and horrible, hemp paste stuff. It makes me wonder if that wasn't part of the plan.
It's cheap. When it comes to a corporation, they don't want to spend a lot of money in overhead. They want to make sure that they spend as little money as possible and make the maximum amount of profits. It's cheap to buy it from China, and they'll deal with it when it comes.
With
and that's
no
how
consequence.
Corporations think of it.
Yeah, because there's no consequence for a corporation. They have all of the rights that we're supposed to have as human and none of the responsibility. So essentially more rights than humans is how it goes.
Exactly. Why isn't GM in jail right now? We know that at least 300 people, and if not more, were killed because they put in a faulty switch, knowing that the switch was faulty, into their cars and put them through the assembly line and sold them, and people died. So if GM wants to be a human and have the rights of humanity, then GM needs to be tried and sent to prison.
Mm-hmm.
So who goes? The board of directors? The CEO? Who goes?
Right. And you can bet it won't be the psychopaths in charge. It'll be, you know, the lackeys who get blamed.
It
As
always is.
usual.
It always is.
Yep. Or
Even at
they.
MF Global, I mean, John Corzine, you think of him as like a big mover and shaker, but obviously he's a patsy and a pawn because he got thrown under the bus for that.
Right. Right. That's how it is every time. Every time. Yeah, because why aren't, Bush and Cheney in prison? So, kill one
Why
person.
isn't every government leader in prison? Why is the alternative media talking about Putin as if he were like some sort of savior, like another Jesus? Why is the libertarian movement and the Kremlin buddying up together? And Ron Paul's never been so popular in Russia than he is right now. These kind of things, these questions boggle me and keep me up at night. I can't
Mm-hmm.
understand what's happening here. Why is that marriage happening? I don't understand it, but it's curious to me.
Very much so. Very much so. Um, Gosh. Probably has something to do with the next election. That's what I'm thinking.
Everything has to do with the next election. Every time I
Right?
look in the news, I have to pass by about 17,000 articles
Yep.
on Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton.
Yep. I don't even want to think about it. Don't even
I don't
want to
even
think.
pay attention. It's political rhetoric. You're not going to see me reporting on it,
Oh,
on Occupy
excellent.
corporatism, and unless something like serious and real happens there. But I'm not going to feed into that. Oh, who are you going to choose? The red or the blue? Which one do you like? It's your choice. You're free to choose red or blue. You can't have any other color but red or blue. That's all we got in stock. But you're free to choose.
Yep. And it's all manufactured. We were talking about that the last time we spoke about the left-right dynamic is all planned out together. They plan it all out. Who's going to be the bad guy this time, and there's skin in the game on both sides. So
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
Obama's done some horrible things, but so did Bush before him, and so did Clinton before him, and so did Bush before him, and Reagan, and on and on and on we go.
Yep.
We're just acute to it because it's happening right now. And we're interested in what's happening right now. And we don't care about what happened last week because that was last week. This is right now.
Mhm.
And if we don't stop acting like, dogs when they see a squirrel, then we're just going to keep hearing about right now and not look at anything in context. And everything's blown out of proportion when you take it out of context.
Mm. Yeah. And that's by design as well. I mean, the same with the. You also have an article about the global warming and geoengineering, and that whole um, the the story that's out there right now, preventing an ice age. Are they?
Yeah. John Holdren, who a couple of years ago said, chemtrails are awesome. They help us out. We should chemtrail the entire planet. Let's go for it. Go big or go home,
Drill, baby, drill.
Yeah,
Same
exactly.
idea.
So he came out and last week and he said global warming may be preventing a new ice age, and geoengineering could be assisting in preventing this new ice age that we might be coming into. Well, yeah, we're coming into a new ice age. Obviously, our Earth is in its elliptical run around the sun right now, and that's when most of the ice ages occurred. We are seeing drastic changes in our planet, which coincides with the ice ages that we have in recorded history, that the events that happened before the ice age. There's a lot of really interesting science. There's a lot of science out there based on predictive models, which are bunk because you can put anything you want in it. And Michael Mann over at the University of Virginia, and who is now hiding out at Penn State University, he proved that to us with his hockey stick graph. He created that with a predictive model and just put in information until he got that graph that he came out with. And Al Gore featured that in his Inconvenient Truth. And that was a completely doctored projection. And I actually wrote an article last week, which I thought was hilarious. A lot of climate scientists have come out and said that the United Nations and the IPCC are fledgling it up for climate science and putting out such bad information, and they want them to get out of the climate change business. They're messing it up for them, for the rest of the people.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, when I was in college, this was in the 90s, that was everything. It's like global warming, this is what's going on, what are you going to do about it? And I felt like, well, damn, I didn't do it. How come it gets to fall on me to figure out what to do?
Oh no, you were spraying your hair with Aquanet, and that was
Right,
the cause.
right. And I had a refrigerator. Right?
All right.
So it's my fault. So I thought, something's going on here. And now, we just see the difference between, they told us it was just going to keep getting hotter. And, we've gone through these really, the so-called polar vortex situation and, ice forming in different areas where it hasn't been in the sea. And so people are asking questions, but they're being given the same program. Oh, no, you're not a scientist. You don't have a right to ask a question like that. You just don't understand. Yep.
Well, I've looked into both sides of this, and absolutely 100%. There is propaganda on both sides of this, and it makes it very difficult to get to the actual truth of what is happening, because the oil companies are paying for Mark Morano over at Climate Depot, who is hooked up with members of the Council for National Policy, and they're going out there saying that climate change doesn't exist and isn't happening, and all these other pseudoscience things that are coming out of their mouths. And then you have the other side, which is, oh my God, climate change is happening. If we get rid of CO2, it'll stop it. Since we haven't gotten rid of CO2, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse, even though it doesn't happen. They keep projecting 100 years or 50 years into the future, because who knows what's going to happen by then. And that's a safe bet. If you're going to scare somebody, make sure that it's at least a generation ahead, so they don't have to experience it in their generation, and they could be fearful for their children, because everybody wants their children to succeed and have a good time and have a planet that's viable. We don't want our children to die on this earth, or this earth to die so we can't have any more children. So that's really difficult to get in the middle of all of that propaganda. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the 97% consensus, the fact is, studies that are showing viable observational data against the accepted man-made climate change theory is not published. A small percentage of them are actually published. So when you have a small percentage of opposing data being published, and the majority of it being data that is for your mode of thinking or the theory that you have accepted, then yes, you will by virtue have a high consensus. But it's a doctored number. And that's another part of the problem. If you say that it's for climate change, you get tons of funding. If you prove that climate change is not man-made and that there are other factors going on, or that man's contribution is minute compared to all of the other things that are happening, then your study doesn't get published, and it's not part of the peer-reviewed studies that are then lumped into that 97% consensus.
Yeah, there's a working canon of what's acceptable, basically, to publish about. So it's completely doctored. And like you said, you only get funding, to come up with the answer that they're looking for, the funders. And that's how it is across the board, not only in climate science, but in medical science. And, even the other sciences really are, controlled by how they're funded. And so this idea of the peer review it's really not what it what it presents itself to be as the method by which we know the truth, the method by which we get consensus, but it's neither, because it's doctored and it's driven by.
But then on the other side, you have lots of doctoring coming out of the back pockets of businesses, corporations that have are oil corporations or invested in oil corporations.
Mm-hmm.
So you have it coming out of both sides.
Right.
And both
Yeah.
sides have their experts, and both sides have their doctors, and both sides have their scientists. And really what it is, I have a paralegal background, and you can pay anyone, a psychiatrist or a doctor, to come in and say whatever you want on the stand. And that's what I'm saying here. So it's
Right.
unfortunate. I don't think that anyone knows what's going on with the planet, whether or not man is contributing as much as is claimed, or if they're contributing less as is claimed on the other side, or not at all. I don't think that we actually know, because both sides are funded and initiated by people who have vested interest in the outcome of that side. And that's the unfortunate part. If it is true, let's say for argument's sake, that it is man-made, we wouldn't know it,
Mm-hmm.
because we're busy trying to fight the propaganda from both sides. If it's not man-made, we still don't know it, because again, we're doing that same argument back and forth, and we're never getting to the crux of the problem. It's like having a fight with someone, and you never get to that point where both of you calm down and you go in and have a discussion
Mm-hmm.
and actually come to a resolution. We're never going to get to that part of the argument if we keep this argument going. And as long as the argument is going, we have funding for both sides happening. We have the EPA and the Obama administration and the United Nations and the IPC and their mandates. And we have corporations, oil corporations and energy corporations, just destroying the planet left and right, destroying whole ecosystems. Because, hey, it's not man-made. We can do whatever the hell we want to the planet.
Right, and it's obvious that we don't even need a study to show us what fracking does. What clear cutting a forest does. We know that it's common sense. So in a way we do know some things. We know that corporations really don't make decisions based on the well-being of an ecosystem or any part of that ecosystem, that it'll just kind of steamroll over life for profit. But we don't know what the the long term, what's going to happen, if there's going to be an ice age or if there's not. If we'll see XYZ in our lifetime or not. We don't, because, like you said, it's rigged on both ends, and there's nobody who's paying anybody just to find out the truth, no matter what it is.
And then when you look into history, and the history, the meteorological, sorry, I messed that up, history is very new. But when you look back, you see all sorts of tumultuous weather patterns happening periodically throughout recorded history. So maybe because we're here now, and we're living in this box, in this body at this time, and we're dealing with what's happening here now, it's very acute to us. It's very obvious to us that something is different. Going back generations, you'd probably hear lots of stories about changes in the climate. In fact, I'd guarantee that you would. And if you went back farther in history, you would hear stories and reports and records that there were changes in climate and things happened and people didn't know what to do about them. We didn't have the infrastructure that we have today, so the casualties and the destruction to villages were unknowable to us. Here we talk about Sandy costing billions of dollars, but the buildings are still standing. Back in the year 1000 or 1000 or 1200, you're not going to have the same infrastructure. The entire village or the entire town or the entire city would be decimated by a Sandy storm. So just look at everything in context. We are fortunate that we have had in general, a long period of time where the earth climate and the weather patterns have been acclimate to have our civilizations prosper the way that we do, and that we're able to create agriculture and cities and structures and maintain residences, whereas before we were basically nomadic or wandering wherever the food was, following the food and following the weather. Um, but things change. Everything changes. And the amount of time compared to the 4.5 billion years that the planet's been around, that's a very, very small amount of time. And you would expect that it would start to shift at some point, and it looks like it is. And that's logical to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And anything that, any sort of way of thinking about what's going on that points us towards, again, apologizing for existence, like, oh, it's cow farts, so eating meat is bad and, you're destroying the planet. Not only are you, eating something with a face, but you're destroying the planet too. So those type of things are kind of red flags for me because they lead towards apologizing for your existence. Um, and the whole, it's man caused way of looking at it as well is like, well, yeah, so you should feel bad about burning wood because in the winter to stay warm, because we're cutting all the trees down and this and that and the other thing. So it's not geared towards looking at the big picture, and looking at how it's really industry and not individuals that we need to really look at if that's what the issue is, which 9 times out of 10 industries are the problem when it comes to, like you said before, destroying ecosystems and polluting and all the things that we know are happening and that we know have a bad effect on our environment.
Yeah, if you're cutting down trees to heat your house, you are cutting into their profits. Yeah, that's a bad thing. They just don't tell you that part of the conversation. They make up some other reason why it's bad, but they don't want to tell you that you're cutting into their profit margin, and they don't want you to do that. When you create a watershed and you're not using municipal water, well, then you're cutting into their pocketbook, and yeah, that is a problem. But they don't tell you that part. They tell you all this other stuff. Some municipalities actually believe that because the cloud is over the city at that time when it's raining, that all the rain coming down belongs to the city. And that if you collect it, you're taking from the city, you're stealing from the city.
Crazy.
Ridiculous.
Yep.
I think that and this is just my opinion, take it for what it's worth, but if you have to suspend all logic and reasoning in order to believe something, then you should stop and think for a minute. How the city can declare ownership because this cloud happens to fly over the top of the city and just happens to rain down at that particular moment, that all of the rain belongs to that city, I don't know. But that necessitates a large diversion from logic and reasoning into some weird faith-based something that I just can't buy into. And as long as we keep doing this and making this socially acceptable to suspend all logic and reasoning in order to adhere to something, then we're going to have these serious problems. And people like you and me are going to stop and scratch our heads and go, that doesn't even make any sense.
And that's what bureaucracy does, is that you have to suspend logic and reason and, the fact that it's really life that's important over everything else, in order to go along with the bureaucracy that feeds itself. The bureaucracy that makes up our government, the bureaucracy that makes up corporations, and the bureaucracy that is basically making it all sort of one force, the corporate government, military, police force that's that functions for profit and not for your, well-being.
Absolutely. Well, we all know that corporations are in business to make money, but we know that to the point where we forget it. And it's like, yeah, I already know that. Well, but this is why this is happening. Oh, when that light turns on. Oh, okay. that we need to have more moments like that. We need to realize how devastating the way in which we conduct business is to our environment, to our societies, to our individualism, to our nuclear structure, our families, even the way in which we view things. The fact that anything can be commoditized is ridiculous and should not exist. The fact that our products are sold to us, our ideas are sold to us, our candidates, our celebrities, our movies, everything, our music, everything is sold to us based on our emotional response to that thing. And it is engineered to be tailored specifically for a certain percentage of the population, knowing that that's going to be their bread and butter. But if it happens to arise into another sect of the population or cross over, like a country singer becomes a pop singer, like Taylor Swift, she just crossed over into pop. Now she's got a whole new audience of people who had never heard of her before, who will listen to her and go back and buy her old albums when she was doing country music, even if they don't like country music, just because they like Taylor Swift. Ideology is what permeates the ability for corporations to function the way that they do. And it is the sole foundation, going back to Bernays, that they use your emotional attachment to things against you to cause fight or flight, to cause you to cry, to cause you to be happy. The next time you feel happy, you'll go and buy that product, even if it's not today. The next time you feel anything, you'll go and do that. You just believe that Betty Crocker cakes taste good simply because your mother in the 50s stopped making cakes the way that she and her grandmother did and her mother did, and started using Betty Crocker because she felt like putting the egg into it was a contribution on her part. There are whole generations of people who don't know what cakes taste like unless it's made from Betty Crocker. And that's sad, but that's a small example of the totality of what's happening here. And it's just glossed over. People are like, yeah, whatever, corporations do that. No, seriously, you get to look at the implications of what these people are doing and how they're getting away with it, because it's a line that you can follow. And which means that there's evidence and there's a trail behind it, which means that if you gather up that evidence and present it to the right person, the right people, the right organization, the right court, you're going to get this heard and you'll make it stop. And that solution-based ideology does not exist in our culture as an accepted reaction to the bad things that corporations, governments, anybody does to us. Instead, we get angry and make a sign. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be protesting, but there are more effective ways to protest, to actually make this stuff stop. The unfortunate part about it is it doesn't come with a product, and it doesn't come with a celebrity behind it endorsing it. So nobody cares and nobody pays attention.
Yeah, and it doesn't come with enough controversy, or something to argue for. It's just sort of common sense and look at this, and who you either see it or you don't, and you either care about it or you don't. But as far as the way that we're manipulated by the media, it's as if that's sort of just an accepted part of the game, that that's going to happen, so you might as well just kind of go along with it, and, oh, you're making too much out of it, kind of thing. And that's the denial that goes along with it, because, once you sort of really start looking at this kind of stuff, you can't go back to being comfortably unaware, I guess.
No, you can't. I can't. I watch The Daily Show and stuff like that because I find it hilarious, most of the stuff that I see in the news. And I don't mind laughing at it. But I realize that that's the majority of what they're getting, and in that context is the way in which it's being processed. And so that perception of it is just built into the structure. What we were talking about with Facebook and the algorithm, that to me is scarier than anything the NSA could do. Seriously, because where are they getting that information from? Guess what, guys? They're getting it from these corporations. Corporations are selling it to them. That's where they're getting it from. The fact that we, the fact that we even went out and bought presents for Christmas is a construct, a structure that has been passed down And we don't pay attention to where it came from. We don't pay attention to why we stay at home and have a dinner with our family, as opposed to go out and riot in the streets and have sex with little kids and bang on people's doors for wine and food, which is how Christmas used to be celebrated for a long time, for
Mhm.
centuries. But nobody knows where anything comes from, and so they don't understand why things are happening the way that they're happening right now. And there's so much fantastical fairy tales going on around that are devastating to people who would take action, because it's so big and so bizarre. And how do you even start? It's like when you're moving out of your house and you have that one closet where you threw everything in it, and you know you have to go and box that stuff up, but you're pretty sure that if you open the door, everything's going to fall on you. And you certainly do not want to spend an entire day going through that closet and picking out things you want to keep and things you want to throw away. And then you have to go and donate some of the stuff, and then you have to take some of it to the dump. You don't even want to deal with this. You'd rather just move and let your landlord keep the deposit and keep that closet closed.
Mhm.
That's how it is. There's so much insurmountable garbage to sift through and so many rabbit holes to go down. The reason why is because you're interested in it. And if you're interested in it, there's a market for it. And if there's a market for it, there's money to be made. You're going to hear about it. And that's the truth. And my peers don't like me saying that, which is why they don't like me. But I don't mind telling you that, because I don't get paid by their corporate heads. I'm independently funded. I am funded by myself. So I can tell you that it's all a marketing campaign. It's all a scheme. If you're interested in aliens, you'll see a lot of stuff on aliens. They've got lots of stuff on aliens. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter, because you're interested in it. You have an emotional response to it. You're likely to be gravitating toward that. If you are interested in the Illuminati, or there's lots of stuff on the Illuminati. It's the same tactic. It's the same tactic that gets the customers spending all of this money, billions of dollars, putting themselves in debt every single year. They can't even afford that kind of debt, but they do it anyway. They do it, uh, it's like a neurotic compulsion, because it's Christmas and you have to do this. You have to spend $6,000 or $2,000 or $200, even though you don't have any of that. You have to do it. Max out your credit cards, take a loan, remortgage, refi your house, something. Because of what? Because the corporations in the 1800s decided that Christmas would be good for them. And so they created with Harper's Magazine this idea of this big fat man. And that was the first time that the Santa Claus that we know today even existed. And it was purely for the benefit of department stores at the time. And that's why. And we still do this today, and we do it compulsory because we don't understand where it comes from. We don't understand that we're feeding the beast. We're told that it's a religious thing, or it's this and the other. We don't even understand where the religious traditions came from either. How it's been passed down, how the evolution of just Santa Claus himself has gone throughout the centuries, because we don't care about that. We're living today. We're living now. We're dealing with the problems that are happening right this instant. Whatever happened back then, it doesn't affect us, because that was back then. But the reason why we do what we do today is because of back then. And as long as we stay ignorant, then this stuff will keep continuing. So if you want to be ignorant, just enjoy your life as it is now. Try to have a good time and hope for the best. But if you don't want to be ignorant and you want to take an honest look at history and how things have come to this point, I'm promising you there are clues in how to get rid of each one of these problems in the historical context of the evolution of these problems. It's always that way. So it's whatever we want, collectively, whatever we want. Do we want to read about it and complain about it and buy our Berkey water filter, or do we want to actually stop it? It's up to us.
Yeah, and if, we can look back in the historical record and see how Christmas, for instance, was socially engineered, and the government decided that it would be a good thing, and that's why you have time off. That's why, there are laws in place for you to have time off around this time of year. And that's why, for instance, the Ebola scares and things like that, like Thomas Sheridan was just pointing out, well, yeah, that stopped because it was time to go Christmas shopping. You don't want people to be, afraid to go out shopping that they'll get Ebola. So those stories stop, and then, oh, you should be thankful for that we're not all dead. So, be thankful for your family, go out and get them presents and spend a lot of money. put yourself in debt, all of those things.
Every single news outlet that told you, and I'm talking to all you all listening, every news outlet that told you that there was going to be an outbreak of Ebola in the United States, don't go to that news site ever again. They lied to you, obviously, because it never happened. Pay attention. Sometimes news outlets do things because they need ratings, they need clicks, they have investors, or they have people who advertise on their website or in their magazine or on their news broadcast, and they need to ramp up. I'll tell you something. I know that from about mid-October to mid-January is the lowest amount of people coming to my website. Honestly, because of the holidays, because of preparations. And you guys are not online looking at our websites. You're preparing for what you're going to be enduring for Thanksgiving and Christmas. There's got to be something to get you onto those websites. And it's not just alternative media, it's mainstream media. They all do it. But every one of those outlets that told you there's going to be an outbreak in the United States, you should never go to their website ever again. No matter what you hear from your friend who posts something on your Facebook page or tweets you something that something else is happening and it's from that website, just dismiss it because they lie. And that would be a really great way for all of us to just weed out the liars. Every time they ramp up something and make something out of nothing and then it never happens, and we never go back to their website and we don't use them as a credible source of news, they will just go away and die off. And then what's left? Credible sources of news that we can actually trust. Oh my God, what an amazing concept.
Yeah, that is an amazing concept, and I've always loved your stories that come out. And I get a lot of syncs with your stories too, because you go and look at the stuff I've been sort of thinking about and going, and so I get a lot of these aha moments with your stories, and it's a great site to go to. OccupyCorporatism.com is filled with great stories, and you've been really prolific lately as well. Sometimes I see you put out 2 and 3 stories a day, so there's a lot of stuff on there to enjoy.
Yeah, there's about 7 different categories and over 5,000 articles. And it's all source linked. Don't believe me. I don't want you to. I'm trying to bring real journalism back. So I have source links to back it up. Everything that is in the article is backed up by information that says that is what it is. And I may not even agree with it, but that doesn't matter. My opinion does not matter. This is news. This is non-opinion based, not op-ed pieces. I don't use the first person in any of my articles. I don't use adjectives that are directed toward a specific end that you would perceive the person making the quote or in a particular light. I don't think that that's fair, because you should be able to read information and make a decision on your own. So that's what I'm doing at OccupyCorporatism.com and the U.S. Independent and everyone who contributes to that website. That's what we're doing. We're trying to bring actual fact-based news back to journalism. And if we're the only one out there, then we're the only one out there. But that's my contribution. That's what I would like to be remembered as the one person who spent her entire career just putting out non-opinionated news and giving you the opportunity to make a conscious decision.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Susanne Posel, and we'll have you back soon.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun.
Me too. A lot of fun.